In the previous video, we started to work on some Python codes um, to import and process some of the um, end of day stock data, right? Um, so let's continue to work on that. Let's continue to work on that and see if we can uh, make some more use of the pandas framework, right? Um, so last time we wrote this function, this Python function takes a symbol, which is a string, as input, and then uh, it's going to use this pandas read CSV file function to, to read the stock data from the disk uh, into Python, and then we can start to work on it. Um, this is a very convenient function call. It's just one function call, and it allows you to actually load up this entire time sequence, right? So for every day we have like this many numbers, right? Some of them are integers, some of them are floating point numbers, and then we have to uh, take out the right information. That's the closing price that we are going to actually process, right? Um, and this is just for one symbol, TQQQ.eod, right? And if you are interested in lots of different symbols, you can download them from Yahoo Finance, right? If if you are not sort of familiar with this kind of web scraping technique for taking the for downloading the stock data from Yahoo Finance, I can make another video about it. It's slightly different from what you can find on YouTube. It's a kind of a more sophisticated way for downloading those data in a systematic way, right? In an automatic way. So, um, but getting the data is not too difficult. It's relatively straightforward, and there are plenty of YouTube videos explaining that already, right? But now let's try to focus on how do we actually deal with the data, right? But before we get into the neural networks and those are more complicated stuff, let's try to find out if there's any additional kind of capabilities that might be useful for us down the road, right? From pandas, additional pandas capabilities that we can sort of explore a little bit, right? So we are going to implement a strategy that's kind of used quite widely by traders, right? And this strategy is based upon uh, moving averages, the moving averages of closing prices, right? So you can in this strategy you basically compute two moving averages, a short-term moving average and then a long-term moving average. If the short-term moving average goes above the long-term moving average, then you go long on a particular symbol, right? And if it's the opposite, if the short-term moving average goes below the long-term moving average, you go short, right? So let's see if we can just use pandas to implement this kind of a strategy, moving average strategy, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is to create a new column for my data. Um, this is the pandas data frame, right? This is the pandas data frame because the output of the get function is the pandas data frame. I wrapped the closing price, this particular column, inside of a data frame, right? So if it's a data frame, you can add columns to it, and the column that I'm going to add is called SMA3. That's a simple moving average. It's a 3-day simple moving average. So I'm going to call that particular column this particular name, right? And then how am I going to compute it? I'm going to do this data C. That's how I access the closing price column of the data frame, right? And then I can call this function called rolling. And this function, this method, is defined on a is defined on the data frame object, right? What this function does is to take a window with a fixed width, right? And this width is actually the input to this rolling function, right? And then it's gonna slide this window across the entire time series. So if I put 3 here, it's gonna take a 3 data window, and then move that 3 data window across the entire time series. So within every window, there's gonna be the closing price for 3 days, right? And this window is gonna start from the beginning of the time series and then moving gradually to the end of the time series. And every time it moves, it's gonna move by just 1 day, right? So it's a 3-day moving average. And then how do I actually compute the average, right? I call the mean function for the output of the rolling function. Uh, so this mean function is going to compute the average for all the different days, or all the for the closing prices within the 3 days. That's the time window is actually moving across the time series, right? So 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 by chaining these two different methods together with on the data frame object, then what I'm getting is another column. Which is the 3-day moving average, right? And in order to actually implement the strategy, one moving average is not enough. I need a second one. That's going to be our short-term moving average. The long-term moving average, let's just use 5 days. So it's going to be a 5-day moving average. It's going to be data C rolling. It's going to be 5-day, and then I'm going to take the mean, right? That's going to be my 5-day moving average, right? And it's going to be dropped. It's going to be stored in this SMA5 column, right? And at this point, I may want to do a drop NA, right? Because when you do this kind of moving averages, some of the windows are not going to have enough days. You are doing 3-day window, right? So some of the windows are not going to have 3 days in it. If you account for the first window, the beginning window, and also the ending windows, right? In that case, those windows, the output of the calculation is going to be not a number, right? So that's why I need to do this dot drop NA to drop not a number, right? To drop those invalid numbers, right? But now let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at these two moving averages and see how they look like, right? How do I actually make a plot of those different curves? Or different columns of the data frame, right? So suppose I don't want to look at the entire time series, which is like 5 years long, right? If it's 5 years long, it's going to be very long, right? I just care about the past like couple of years, 1 year or couple of years. 2020, I care about the time period from January 1st, 2020 to 2021. I care about this particular time period, right? So how do I actually get access to a certain section or certain range of rows of this data frame table, right? I use the dot loc, this dot loc function. It's not exactly a function, right? Because you are using square brackets here. It's not exactly a function, but this particular call allows you to take just a specific number of rows that's within this particular time range, right? Particular index range, and you are using time as the index, so that's the range of the data, right? And that's the range of rows, right? What's going to be the column that I want to make a plot for, right? Here you have to give a list of strings. I care about the closing price, right? And then I care about SMA3 and SMA5, right? And then I close the second bracket. And then all I have to do is to call the plot function about this slice or certain portion of my data frame, right? And if I run this cell, then it's going to create moving averages that I have created, right? Oh, sorry, I didn't actually run the first section yet. I need to run the first cell to create the data object, and then I run the second cell to compute the mean and also make the plot, right? So that's the plot that's created, right? So C is in blue color, and then SMA3 is going to be the orange color, and then SMA5 is going to be the green color, right? If you want to sort of blow up the figure, just click on this place, and then it's going to give you a bigger version of the figure, and then you can zoom in and zoom out, right, by using your cursor. But is that going to be a winning strategy? Is that going to make us any money? Is that going to be make us any money, right? So SMA3 is going to be the 3-day moving average, that's going to be the orange line, right? So if the orange line goes above the blue line, the green line, we go long, right? And if it goes below the blue line, we go short, right? For this particular segment, it looks like that's the correct thing to do, right? So if the orange line goes above the green line, we go long, so we can capture this part of the profit, right? And then if the orange line goes below the green line, this part is sort of a it's a drop in the stock price, right? And then we have to sort of go short on this part of the on these days, right? So it looks like intuitively it could make sense to do that, right? So let's quantify that and see if it's indeed as what we have imagined, right? If our intuition is actually correct. So how do we actually do that? How do we actually compute the return of this particular strategy, right? The return. Let's introduce another column. We're going to call this column the position column. And the purpose of this particular position column is to record our long or short positions. So if it's a long position, then the value of this particular position is going to be 1. And if it's a short position, we're going to use 0. We're going to use 0 for this short position, right? Why are we not using -1 for the short position, right? It depends. It depends upon your trading strategy. If you are trying to short a particular stock, your position could be not -1, right? That means what? That means you have to take up on an active short strategy, right? And another way of doing this kind of a short position is to just sell the stocks that you have, right? Don't hold it. Sell the stock that you have. In that case, you are not really making a profit from the drop in the price, right? In that case, you are only just trying to avoid this drop in the price, right? It's not really an active way of shorting a particular stock. It's just not making a profit, from the dropping price. So if that's the case, then you can set the position to 0, right? So we can try both. We can try both kind of strategy, and it's very easy to do once you have the code ready, right? But let's try to implement the passive way of doing the short, implementing the short strategy, right? But here we are going to use the NumPy. We're going to use some NumPy functions, right? So data position, it's going to equal to what? We're going to use the NumPy mp.where function. We're going to use this where function, and the where function, the first input is supposed to be the condition. What's going to be the condition, right? It's data SMA3. So if SMA3 is larger than data SMA5, if it's larger than this 5-day moving average, right? And then it's going to take upon the value of 1. Otherwise, it's going to take upon the value of 0, right? So this particular column, that's called a position, that's attached to the data frame, is just going to have 2 different values, either 1 or 0, right? Because the SMA3 is either above SMA5 or it's equal to or below SMA5, right? In that case, it's going to have a value of 0, right? Otherwise, it's going to have a value of 1, right? But is that enough, right? Is that enough for us to actually compute our returns, right? Compute our profits? It's not exactly enough because when you actually see SMA3 larger than SMA5, it's based upon the closing price of that particular instrument, right? By closing price, it means that the market has closed, right? So if you want to buy the stock, if the position is positive 1, right? Or if you want to sell the stock, if the position is 0, it has to happen on the opening of the next day, right? So So if you just use this calculation as the as a foundation or as a basis of your trading, it's not really realistic because you have a foresight bias, right? Your implementation of the strategy has to be your action that you have to take is on the next day when you see this condition to be true or false, right? So how do you actually avoid this kind of a foresight bias in this particular line of code, right? It's actually quite simple if you are using pandas, right? If you are using pandas, it's very, very simple. So all you have to do is to use the shift function, right? So position, data, position. I'm going to change the content of this particular column to what? The original content dot shift by 1 day, right?